Hello, Misha. Welcome to the New Dawn podcast. I am so happy to be talking to you today. Would you please give a little introduction of who you are, what you do, and anything else you want to share?
Absolutely, and it's utterly my pleasure to be here. It truly is. I am, for the people who love the labels, I'm a 46-year-old woman. um, I currently reside in East Anglia, quite close to the coast. But I had lived in Mallorca for 20 years, so I do feel allegiance with many different countries or lands of the world, shall we say it that way. I was born and raised in London originally to an Irish mother and a Jamaican father, which brought a whole illumination of life by itself, because those two cultures are really quite celebratory of life. They kind of do welcome the day in. And was although they come from very religious backgrounds, was actually they decided together they weren't going to ask my sister and I to follow any religion. So I was quite free to go into the world and find my space. And in doing so, realized that there was a lot going on within me and I wanted answers. So I started searching and thought originally I would go into work with the shaman from South America to learn the plant law there. But universe had a completely different path for me. And as a wise friend once told me, you can keep taking your foot off the path. Universe will find a way to put the path back under your foot. And so I found myself in India, of all places, and then my love for Ayurveda. And I have since become an Ayurvedic practitioner, practicing now for the past 8 years. And when I say practicing, I mean practicing as in I live my life that way. It is also my work.
Mm-hmm.
And so currently having had to run very quickly from Mallorca because of Brexit and COVID in 2021, I'm now re-establishing myself in the UK and helping people, I hope, through Ayurveda to understand self-acceptance and self-accomplishment.
That's just such a beautiful thing to be offering. What a profound share and life journey that you're on to be able to do that. The relationship we have to our bodies are so important and how we relate to them. And I know that in Ayurveda, there's such a connection between our spirit and our bodies and nurturing ourselves, isn't it?
Yes. And we've largely become accustomed to thinking of the body as something that is just there. But actually, if you start to think about it in terms of this is your body is actually your home. You reside in it. So if you treat it unwell, if you let it get blocked up, I mean, who wants to live with blocked drains, right? Who wants their sewage coming back up and swimming around the house? Who wants a house that doesn't function with windows that won't close? And the body is such a very special thing to the spirit to reside in.
Mm-hmm.
That when you start to see the beauty of the fact that you chose this body,
mm-hmm.
and you can accept it, well, then the world becomes all opportunities are available. It makes such a difference, Dawn. I actually really struggle sometimes to explain it, but the one way I explain it that people are starting to really resonate with is instead of fighting your nature, Ayurveda and people like myself are helping you to harness your nature.
I love that. I have my signature coaching program is called The Essence of You, which includes your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual selves and how to you connect to those aspects of you, of which as a plant-based nutritionist, I really feel very drawn to many of the Ayurveda practices and the way that you approach your relationship to self and those different aspects of self. And in my experience too, it really has such a profound shift in every single way when you start to relate to your body in a mindful way.
Yeah, and particularly coming from a path of self-destruction. I was originally so unhappy with excuse me, everything that had happened in the beginning of my life, that I thought, well, you know, what's the point? Let's just play along and let's just drink all the alcohol. Let's take all the drugs. Let's live the unhealthy lifestyle. What difference does it make? It was a particular point in my life in Mallorca. I think I was about 30, 31. And I suddenly looked up and thought, why am I not dead? I've done all these disgusting, abusive things to my body. Why am I still here? So what Ayurveda did for me was taught me that you can do all the harmful things, but there still is always an answer.
Oh,
There still is always an answer. There is never no hope. Hope is eternal because hope is love.
I'm definitely a big fan of creating hope as possibility for something different, a space for something different to occur.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I invited you on today to talk and to share your experience and your perspective is largely to do with the journey that all of us take to some level, some degree, from feeling disempowered to feeling stronger in ourselves. And obviously, we say obviously actually, but maybe the listener doesn't know that, but obviously the relationship you have with your body can massively impact how strong you feel, like when you're sick and when you're unwell, when you're overwhelmed,
That's right.
all that kind of stuff. It amplifies an already existing thought or experience about yourself, and it shows up in the body.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't exactly what I had envisaged us talking about today, but I love where it's going. But in what I'd like you to do is talk a little bit about your journey of disempowerment to empowerment. And because obviously we've just talked about the end product and how what's happened. Where did it start from?
It started essentially with my parents. It started with the fact that I was, excuse me, I absolutely doted on my dad. I mean, I thought he was the most marvelous, miraculous man. It turned out that my father was far more interested in making babies than looking after them. So I'm one of 22 children.
Crikey.
Yes. Well, he thinks it's 22. It could be anywhere between 25 and 27 in reality. So I found myself fatherless at the age of 4 when my mother realized this man was uninterested in looking after the 2 children she had with him. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer at the same time and was terrorized by the doctors to abort my little sister because, you know, they wanted to treat the cancer. She was then in a bind because if she did that and she died anyway, I would be an orphan. So obviously children take on stress. You can't, emotion is energy. Energy is currency. So you transfer it.
Yeah.
So that was the start of when things became a little bit difficult for me. My mother was then raped at knife point when I was 8. So I effectively became parentless as she was trying to process and deal with the fact that she had had this ultimately, I mean, it's a mortal trauma. You know, not only was the body attacked, but actually she could have lost her life.
Were you aware of any of that at that time?
I didn't find out about that until I was 21. So I wandered around, started cooking for my little sister and myself and cleaning the house because I could see that the lady I called my mother was no longer capable. I just could sense it. And this is where I started fighting with my teachers at school. This became a career, my whole educational life. I started becoming very agitated because I felt there were answers that they couldn't give me. And I was annoyed that they had the title teacher. If you're a teacher, why don't you have the answers? Where are my answers? So even at that age, I was always looking, there's something I wanted to know, but everybody I asked just decided I was a difficult child. So being quite astute, I realized that I needed to become very quiet, particularly because I could do things that other people couldn't. So when I would ask my mother, who is that man standing in the corner of the room? And she would say, what man? There's no man there. You have to stop telling these stories. it became very obvious that I was living in a world where somehow I was different.
What were you seeing at that time? Was that a repeated experience? Was it happening to you a lot?
What I discovered is I could see the spirits or the impressions of people who had been. What I mean by that, I'll give you the best example. In Mallorca, I was in a car one day and I went, oh, and a friend turned and said to me, what? Oh, and thankfully she's a very spiritual friend, and I could say to her, it's very funny when you get thrown back in time. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, all the roads just disappeared, and I've just seen 2 centuries riding across to Sineu. The invaders are coming. So I could see the 2 horsemen riding
Wow.
across how Mallorca used to look. The man I was asking about in the room to my mother was actually the spirit of the gentleman who'd lived upstairs who died in a fire. He was consumed by smoke. But nobody was very happy when I brought these circumstances up. I also would have visions. So I would know things before they actually happened. And that also I found irritated a lot of adults. They were not happy that this child kept telling them what was going to occur. So I just went inside myself, and my escape was to go into the fantasy world, to read all the literature that the fantasy writers had put there for me. I could go to the hobgoblins, I could go to the dragons, I could ask the wizards and witches for some lore. Interestingly, art does tend to provide some answers for the spiritual world. It's incredible how a sculpture, a painting, a piece of poetry, or some text can give you the message that you were looking for. So I read devoutly, and didn't, as a teenager, I wasn't one to go out with friends. I would rather stay home, make sure my little sister was okay, because I was working from the age of 13 to help bring some money in. And I just read.
Did you find that you started to gaslight yourself in your experiences and shut them down?
Yeah.
Or were they, so did it become a sort of, anytime you had an impression or something, you would just quickly move it out of the way? Or what was that process like for you?
I used to call it shutting down, or going into, I would go into a space where I wouldn't let them communicate with me.
Oh, there was places like that.
So I'd go, so it's like something like a white room. But for me, I would always go to a forest, and I would just walk amongst the trees until the spirits would go or the vision would go, and I was safe again, because if I said anything, then obviously I would be it would be unwelcomed. So yeah.
And so what kind of fantasy books were you reading and getting lost in at the time? Did you have any fan favorites?
Yeah, so Susan Cooper was where I started with the Darkest Rising sequence, and that was all the story of Merlin, King Arthur, the legacy, the old ones, and something really went off, like at the back of my, I could feel all the back of my head when I started reading about the old ones. I wanted to know where they were, because I felt they were real. I felt that actually this is not, she's not writing about something here. These people, there are people out there that exist that do this, not time travel, but they can, time and space works differently for them.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. But my real disconnection didn't happen until I was 19. And that was my fall down, go bang moment, where basically I absolutely shut everything down. And that was due to a sexual assault, where essentially the first person I lost my virginity to decided I wasn't a virgin. And so he and his cousin conspired to have their revenge at my little lie. And so he basically gave me to his cousin. So I was raped for revenge.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. And I ignored my instinct all the way. I knew I shouldn't have gone that night. I couldn't get warm. It was cold and rainy. Everything signaled don't go. The trains were all late. And I still got there, and it happened. And that for me was too much. Fall down, went bang, cut everything off. Cut off from the body, cut off from the all the abilities that I had, my peace. And I spiraled.
So when you, first of all, I am so sorry that happened to you. That is a truly awful thing for anybody to go through. And I'm sure on some level it's, I want to say you've made peace with it, but it's all part of our stories. Yeah. So,
I
but I
made
still,
peace with the situation very quickly, actually, because for me it was just I thought the father boys to be very stupid, not judgmentally so. I just thought, what a foolish thought to come to. And even if a lady did lie about being a virgin, what difference did it make to them? But also I somehow was aware, even at that age, that there was a higher energy involved, and I didn't really have to be angry with them or allow any lesser energy like the negative ones come into play. I was more upset that people didn't seem to be able to notice that I had been affected in some way, and I didn't have the language skills at that age to say I've been hurt and I don't know what to do about this. And I then found out later that actually those young men had finally picked on the wrong female, and ultimately one of them paid with his life, and the other one now is committed to a wheelchair. He will never walk again. But then the disempowerment became worse because I was so vulnerable and so promiscuous, looking for anybody who would just be kind to me and like me. And I found someone who was kind to me, and he did seem to like me at the beginning, but he was grooming me to be a concubine for his business colleagues, which I did because I just, he was kind and he liked me and he did nice things for me, but I had to do nice things for his friends. My get out of jail free card was actually having a friend who could see I was miserable and she didn't know why and she didn't know how to approach the subject. So she took me on holiday and found that Thompson Holidays were recruiting, and she signed me up to be a holiday rep and said, get out of London. London is not doing you any good. Go somewhere where there is sunshine, where there is brightness. She's from the Mediterranean herself, so she felt that, that could be a really good way for me to come round to being back to the friend that she'd known. And so off I trotted. But unfortunately, the repping world is all about the partying.
hang on a second before you go on to that bit. So did it feel like you were kind of imploding onto yourself and
Yeah.
sort of almost entropic, where you were, like our souls and our experiences and our happiness and joy, they're an expansive nature. They kind of roll outwards, don't they? They want to take up more space, and you feel like you're taking up more room because you feel joyful.
Yes.
Trauma does the opposite, doesn't it? It makes you fold in on yourself, almost like into a black hole. I feel like that you were folding in on yourself, hopeless and powerless. And
and I found that I could activate the actress very quickly. So I could go out and do the smile, I could put the face on, I could be the life and soul of the party. And the minute that door was closed into wherever I was living, it was overwhelmingly dark.
when you were
sorry, carry on.
When you were out with that mask on, how did you do that? How were you able to connect to something, another persona, another experience? Was it like a form of survival? You knew that you didn't want to attract attention to yourself, to make it.
Yes, which I also now realize came from some witch wounds. Or if you're not recognized, they can't hurt you.
Right. Okay, like a persecution programming.
Right. So by not being myself and being this alter ego, it was fantastic, because then nobody would know who was in here. So that was keeping me safe. I couldn't go back to my forest anymore because I'd lost that connection. I had basically cut it off. But this alter ego was great because she was somebody who wouldn't be recognized for having any abilities or having been affected by a situation, that nobody could read it quite right.
Do you think that even in those really black hole moments that you were still, there was still a desire for connection from you, like the mask was serving some sort of ability to still have forms of relationships, or had you completely isolated yourself?
No, this is one thing I ideally wish, if people watching this podcast take nothing else away. You can't actually completely disconnect. You feel like you can, and you put the barriers up and you keep it as far from you as possible, but you are spirit. So the connection is, it's more like, just, you just close a door, but the door can always open. It's not a permanent structure. And even those who do the most despicable things will feel like they're completely disconnected, but actually spirit's always there.
So do you feel like the connection that you were seeking most was from your connection to your spirit and to spirit generally, or
Yeah.
or people, or mainly?
No, it was within. It was within, because I somehow knew if I couldn't understand me, I couldn't appreciate others. You don't have to be able to understand others, and how can you actually, because you are you. The same way they can't, and we're so unique. We can't understand. No, we can have compassion and understanding for someone, but we can't really appreciate them on their level, because we are we and they are they.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that until I got to grips with who is Misha, who am I, what is inside here. But anytime I did want to do some work on this, so I met a medium who, and a proper old-fashioned medium, actually. She gave me my money back at the end, and she said, I can't take your money. I've been told by the guides I have to do this. And it's interesting that there were always people and points in the years that came to pass that would somehow, as I said, universe will always put your foot back on the path. They'll find a way, who were instrumental in making sure that the connection, whilst I didn't want it, I could always feel it.
Oh, you could?
Oh, I could always feel it was there in the background. I didn't want it. I rejected. But they really came into my path to remind me, actually, you are here for a purpose, young lady. You know.
That's really interesting. I find in my own personal life and with my clients, there's two sort of main types of people. Now, obviously, this is reductive, right? But you either have the people like you who are connected to spirit naturally, like it's no effort, it's just there for you. And then the people like me who are really earth based, who are there to be in the body and to learn about what that means. And the connection is much more what's kind of, I don't know, it's just very earthy, very to do with being down here on the ground. And then there's those up here who are much more etheric and able to connect and things like that. So when I was going through my really intense times of trauma, I never felt connected to anything or anyone, and I had no idea that there was anything waiting for me or trying to connect with me. Like, it was just dead. It just felt completely offline. So I think it's just fascinating to hear that whilst you're going through your really intense life experiences, that you're still, there's a thread of connection. Your way that you're actually made is still connected. Do you know what I mean?
And it comes from life purpose as well.
Yes.
So until we meet the people
Exactly.
who can explain the life purpose, we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. And I do understand what you mean by the yeah, I don't really know how to say it either. I want to call you guys earthlings, because you're so connected to the earth that the body is all. And then there are those of us who almost spend 90% of our time actually out with cosmos.
Yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah.
10% is really for the physical plane. Yeah, it was much later, because of my encounters with these people, that I came into my true spiritual path and my direct purpose of being. So I met my ex-husband, who had a broken back at the time, but he was a very spiritual man, and he knew he didn't want surgery. So he asked if we could start studying Reiki together, which we did. And I achieved level 1. He got to level 2. I only wanted level 1 because I just wanted to use it for myself and the animals that we lived with. And it was my Reiki master who started to show me, remind me, because it's not something actually, it's when we come here, we lose a lot of what we take from our past lives, from, you know, the Akashic records. But you can access them. And she helped me, she showed me how to access them. By her contacts, I went on a course with Vera Lopez to do to activate my Merkaba.
Mm-hmm.
So she is a lady who used to work with Drumvelo Melchizedek, who is a gentleman who rediscovered the way to do this. And she, after one meditation, my Reiki master bowed before me and put her hands on my feet, and I became excruciatingly uncomfortable. Instantly wanted to go, didn't like it, and the energy, the connection that I had so long asked not to be there, came back almost like with a smack on the bum, like with a I thought, oh, this jolt. And I said, Denise, what are you doing? Get off the floor. Come on, please. You know, this is, I don't know what you're doing. And she said, no, you don't know who you are. I remember who you are now. And she said the words, we used to worship you. And I went home and I drank a bottle and a half of wine because
Yeah,
I was
I
so,
do. Yeah, I can imagine.
and my Reiki master's gone mad. She's lost the plot. What in the world is wrong with her? By connection, then I met a lady called Susanna Singh, who did my first life regression. And afterwards, she did the same thing. And I thought, what is wrong with all these women? I don't understand. What are they doing? And I said, can I ask what you're doing? Because this is the second time this has happened to me. And she said, Misha, you have one of the highest life purposes that beings come with. Your purpose is to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't know what that means. And she said, well, some people come to be healers or teachers or warriors. She said, your purpose is to be. By you being who you are, your impact in the world is as described in the dawning of the age of Aquarius. You're one of the lights that light the others. And I thought, I don't want that. That sounds like a big job. And I don't know if I want the responsibility. So again, I took my foot off the path and I went and got a very well paid job with the insurance companies, working as an emergency medical assistance coordinator. Was paid fantastically, was soul destroying, and it gave me a nervous breakdown because I'm too sensitive for that world. I can't tell parents of a 2-year-old that they're not covered for a $200,000 bill because they forgot to mention their child had a cough and went to the doctor before they went on holiday. It was just destroying. And my nervous breakdown was really where everything came together, because I was at that point already studying Ayurveda. And I said to the doctor, I'd had this episode. He said to me, you've had a nervous breakdown. And I said, do you mean a burnout? And he said, no, a burnout is largely to do with adrenal fatigue and abuse of the body. He said, in this situation, it's like your body, your mind, and your soul had a big argument and went and sat in separate rooms, not talking to each other.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't do this again. And that's when I started to accept, okay, if my purpose is to be, how do I do this? And then I had the reconnection dawn.
Okay.
So you see, it took almost 20 years to get to the point of fully forming, fully reinvesting. Then I just dropped all the barriers. I said, okay, tell me all about this. This
Do you
thing
know
that
what I find really interesting is there's a sort of a misconception to my mind that these experiences that we have that take us quote unquote off the path are wrong or mistakes somehow. And yet, to my mind, my experience, everything that we do, everything that we are, everything that we're experiencing is all about the experience of the self, the relationship that we have, what we've learned, how we learn it. And if everything was roses all of the time, what would you learn about yourself? What would you
Yeah.
really, really understand? And often I find it's only through contrast that we understand our outer edges of what we don't want and who we're not. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we could all become really healthily connected to ourselves from just waking up on a Tuesday morning and going, oh, I get it. It's all
Yeah.
good. I'm going to live it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to work like that.
No, no. And that's not to say that life isn't there to give you lessons. When I say taking your foot off the path, I mean by really my understanding of the physical plane is because we are embodied consciousness, because consciousness can't experience the physical.
Yes.
And that's why we're given the purpose to come here with. And the more you deviate from that purpose, the less proximity you have to spirit. The lessons that we have, where it feels like you're actually deviating, but that's actually one of the points that you're supposed to pick up. That is more for me about so full self acceptance. But why I say that's when I really started to embrace the point of being, is because Ayurveda is about acceptance. There are no no's in Ayurveda. We don't say no. If one of my clients says I need to eat a chocolate gatto, I say that's great. But are you going to do it with the spirit of a 3-year-old, or are you going to sit there and tell me with every mouthful that this is dangerous and unhealthy? And because
Yeah.
one does
Yes.
damage and one is
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And I will help you with the one that's fine. I help you to digest it, and we'll do all the detoxing if you want. But please don't sit there and tell me it's bad for you and think I will say it's great.
Mm-hmm.
The point of Ayurveda is you accept self, good or bad, if you need to use those terms. We don't, because it is what it is. And I know that phrase is really abused at the moment, but my point
Yeah.
is, if you don't do the shadow work, you can't enjoy the work with the light.
Yes, exactly. And they are so important to be part of the same journey. It's like only seeing one half of the spectrum of the whole.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, to be able
yeah.
to see all of it is to look at the dark, and also the light is in the dark. Like there is so much beauty, and there is nothing more. I think that this is the way that I frame it, because I've done a lot of shadow work. It's a massive part of my life's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's nothing more satisfying or funny or interesting or what humorous is when you've been knocked off your feet and you've had a really intense time and you're lying down at the bottom of a well or whatever with water up your nose, and then you've got somebody who's had the similar experience and you're just laughing at the
Mm-hmm.
absurdity of all of
Mm-hmm.
it,
Yeah, yes,
right?
yes. And we're so afraid of the shadows. We've been taught to reject that part of ourselves that's actually maybe a little bit dark, a little bit inappropriate, maybe a little wild. We're taught to be in control, and we think when we find these beautiful modalities, and I don't believe in just Ayurveda. I mean, I'm open to everything that works for people. If it works, it works. It's great. And there's so many of them that we go and we embrace them because we feel that, oh yes, it's positivity and it's fantastic. And my shock in Ayurveda, when I was told, as somebody who is and I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole doshic explanation now, but I was told as a fire dominant person, you have a really disgusting temper. And I had to acknowledge I am vile when I lose my temper. I had to sit down and get comfortable with the fact that, okay, well, why is, what is it? Well, there isn't a point to it. It's just part of your makeup, darling, and it is something for you to be aware of. So I'm now very cautious about things where they only work with positivity and light, because we have the duality in the physical plane, to understand that when we just accept them as one, it's just the flip side of a coin.
Yeah.
Where, when you have duality, when you have two things and you mix them together, it becomes one thing.
Yes.
And you lose the duality.
That's a bit like the yin yang looks like it's about to be mixed, doesn't it?
Right, right. And we have all these symbols to remind us. You know, the ancients weren't stupid. They left everything so that we could see and sort of work it out for ourselves a bit. Like, you know, guys, you'll get there. But we had to go through the dark ages. We needed that period to remind us that we have so much power and potency, but we must take care with what's within and use what we have at the right time. Now, I said to you, I loved fantasy and it was one of my greatest escapes. Well, one of the people I largely attribute my salvation to is a guy called Terry Goodkind, who wrote the Sword of Truth series. Because from there he explores this duality, this light dark, and what if you have both within? And the lead character has both. And his fight is to be able to understand how his energy works. But you see, he doesn't want to harness it. He never seeks to use it in one way or another. His power comes at need.
What do I need in this moment?
Because I discovered that's how I function. But that's why I had to embrace the dark. And there's a lot of parts where he really goes through, the main character is called Richard. He goes through so many devastating moments, atrocities even. And you think, oh, surely to goodness now he's going to go to the other side. And well, no, he just accepts that's a part of what's within him. And when he needs it, he can use it.
I feel like that about client work. And when the person who is holding a space for you to be on the receiving end of the spaces that you and I hold for people, to know that the person has been through it and has understood it is massively important. And I do believe that what I bring to the table, and I'm guessing you can relate to this, is I have no fear of the shadow or the pain or the darkness or any of those things that most people are, or death. You know, I have no fear about any of that. In fact, I have such compassion and love and tenderness and kindness for people who find themselves in that position, and the ability to go, it's this way. Let's see what's down this road, because I'm pretty sure you don't have to stay stuck in your own hellhole forever. And I'm not worried. Let's do this together.
Yeah,
you know?
I get that totally. And it's the reason why I looked so when I decided to become a practitioner, I looked very closely at, right, what do I want to do with this? Everybody tends to follow the same path. So they do their first 30 hours of study, then they do a massage course, and then they start with massage, and then they start advising people on nutrition, working their way up to the medical, and they do consultations. And I thought, I've got so much more to give than giving somebody a consultation, because I'm about permanent life solutions.
Me too.
There's no quick fixes. My dearest wish, if you're a client of mine, is that I help you and I never see you again. It's
Same.
not a money making.
Yeah. That's exactly why. Yeah. But do you know what? On the subject of empowerment, that's the ultimate form of empowerment when you're working in these kind of things, to be able to say to somebody, you've got the tools. If you need me, I'm here.
Right.
But we've now done this journey so that you can learn that relationship to yourself and feel like you're resourced and powerful.
Yes.
Not to have to rely on somebody and be codependent with your therapist or nutritionist, or, you know, like let's not do that anymore. Let's not be codependent with the people who are supposed to give us help. That's part of the
Yeah.
problem still, isn't it?
Well, this is what happened. So I went into starting my work on myself. I went into going on retreats and was, morning, noon, and night in the Ayurvedic books online, studying whatever I could because I was so fascinated. And then I thought, something's missing here. Because when you go on a retreat, when you finish the retreat, you're just abandoned.
Yes.
There's nothing left. You go home, the washing's up the wall, the dog's running around with your
Yeah.
knickers, the kids are feral, the husband can't find anything and he's got work in half an hour, and you're back in the throes of complete chaos. What did they give you, and what support after the retreat do they offer
Yeah.
to help you in real life moments? And I thought, okay, my passion, I love the retreats. My passion is to help the people with permanent life solutions. So I decided to combine the two. And
Love
so
that.
I'm very close to launching something called Real Life Retreats.
I
And
love that. Tell me more. What
it
are
will
you ready
be
to talk about it yet?
absolutely, because when I say I'm ready to launch, I want to beta test it next month. If I can find the
Oh,
ladies, then we're good to go.
awesome.
So it's 3 women who will come and live with me in a wonderful place called Yellow Rush Lodge, which is between Beverley and York,
In England.
in England,
Oh yeah.
right? And they're just going to have to live with me. That's all I ask of them. They don't have to do anything else. They will get up in the morning. We will do our dinacharya, our daily ritual. So we will cleanse the head, so the eyes, the nose, the mouth. We will oil the body. We will have exercise. We will shower and get breakfast. And it will all be to do with Ayurveda, but they don't have to study this. All they have to do is write in their journal what they liked and what they didn't like. At the end of the retreat, bearing in mind there's a huge pamper day and a feast day in the middle, because I need to help them with all life eventualities. So we, obviously we go out and we celebrate, and we have weddings to go to, we have birthdays. What do you do there? Well, we have to live. So I want to teach them everything. When they leave, they show me the journal. They leave with an action plan. And I say to them, right, you have 3
Is that your
choices.
dog?
That's my dog being a complete. So you have 3 choices. I will call you at the end of the month and we'll have 1 hour to discuss what you want. And you never have to see me again. If you're happy to go about your business and just do it, that's great. The second choice is you want a bit more support. So you can pay me for 3 months. Every week I'll check in with you and make sure we can lock in what you really loved that you saw me do on the retreat, whether it was just the cooking or the lifestyle hacks or whatever. Or the option is, if you got really excited about it and you want to study it with me, it's a 2-month tailored lifestyle and nutrition course, because Ayurveda, we only work with the individual. So I can't do a blanket course. It will always be directly for them. And that is where I feel I can offer something that isn't there yet with retreats and isn't there with Ayurveda. It doesn't exist as far as I'm aware. I'm looking at my colleagues on a daily basis. I go online every day and look up more retreats, and that does not exist yet. I'm also not afraid of competition. So if anybody takes the idea from me and can better it, I think it's fabulous. But at the moment, that's what I'm going to offer.
I love it. That's I love the individual solutions now, as well as, there are teachings that are more universal. But I like the idea that these are so uniquely tailored, because every single person, whilst we may have common themes throughout all of us, we present them in a certain way that's different to everybody else. Like you and I may have similarities, but we'll show them differently. They'll show up differently and mean different things.
Yeah.
So let's take us back to a minute to the moment where you got a smack on the bum.
Got this huge smack on the bum, and I realized, because I met my second higher self, who is dark. She is from the shadows. Right. She is not. People think higher selves are going to be these wonderful, beautiful, divine beings, but Lucifer was also an angel. And I think consciousness has to express itself in every eventuality and aspect. It's exploring. Consciousness is essentially exploring. So higher selves are not always going to be beings dressed in wonderful rose gold, and she is essentially the side of me that I need if I need to take up something on somebody else's behalf, because it's not for me. she provides me with the energy. She's the one, and it intrinsically, it actually began when I started looking at Lord Shiva. And somebody said to me, you know, in India, all the gods wouldn't have actually succeeded without goddesses. Every single battle they had, every situation, they had to go to a goddess to ask for help. And with Lord Shiva, it was Lady Kali, who is.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there I had it.
Hang on, do you want to just explain for the people who don't know who
So
Kali is?
Lady Kali is she is our Lady of Tantra. Essentially, if you raise to that level through the Vedic law, Ayurveda is the baby sister,
Mm-hmm.
yoga is the middle sibling, and Tantra is the highest level. So
Okay.
Lady Kali is a part of this, and the tantric energy is really working with both sides of energy. So she doesn't favor one over the other. She's often seen, she's been abused by the thuggies and people. She's often seen as the goddess of revenge. And it is not that. She's just not afraid to do what is necessary. So, like Lord Shiva, she is considered a destroyer
Oh,
as
okay.
well as a
Mm-hmm.
creator. So,
But those two
her,
things go together, right? You
I can't
cannot,
see how you separate them.
yeah. You have to, in order to create something else, you have to, it's almost like something gets destroyed. Like in its most glorious form, the person I am today is because parts of me were destroyed. And I don't mean destroyed in the pejorative way, like a negative
Yes.
way,
No.
but transformed in order, it's like fire, right? In
Yes.
order for fire to grow, that you are destroying wood.
Yeah.
And out of that comes energy, and it's that continual relationship to those two things, to and almost like, you know, they say you have to let go of something for something new to come in. That's it. That's
There you
essentially
go. That's
what
it.
that dynamic means, and I
It's
think
almost
it's
a
really
decluttering in the
sacred.
body, isn't it? It's
That's
like
right.
yeah, 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 yeah. The
And
things
so
that are taken. So how where I found myself at that point, I had left mainstream employment and I was trying to work in Ayurveda, and I was trying to follow that, as I said, that route that most people take through, you know, doing consultations, and I was doing everything for free, and I was trying to get the word out there and trying to make connections, and um, I found it to be distasteful for me to ask for money, because I hadn't yet seen it as this flow of energy. It for me
okay.
was it was if you know, because really, why weren't we learning this at school?
Yeah, yeah.
Why was this a form of employment for me? This should be basic knowledge. We should know all this by the age of 10. So I found it really difficult on that level to ask for money. And I got a business coach who said to me, right, I'm going to show you now what the difference is. She asked me a question, I think I don't even think I inhaled. I just for 20 minutes sat there and gave her the explanation. And she said, can you see now? She said, a student would have given me an answer that was 2 minutes maximum. A teacher would have given me an answer that was maybe 10 minutes. She said, for 20 minutes, you went non-stop, hell for leather, correcting and writing things down and, you know, handing it to me. She said, that is more expert. She said, you're not where you think you are, lady. You've moved on. So I then could find myself asking for money, but then I found this gap that I didn't like. And so I thought, do I want to just do consultations? Well, I did, because they're bread and butter. It's also very helpful for me because anyway, it's something I need to do in the retreats. But that told me about the transformation of energy. That was a lesson I had to learn. How can I transform the energy? And that again goes to empowerment, because instead of, you know, in the entrepreneurial groups, they say that the entrepreneur, a normal person will say, I can't do that. An entrepreneur says, how do I do that?
Yeah.
This is pretty much what happened for me. I went from completely disempowered, and finding things were going back into a pattern, to becoming empowered again, seeing this is a transformation of energy. And that's what I mean by the bang, the smack, because that's when I realized, and dark is energy.
Yes.
They're both just forms of energy. When I embraced both, so I embraced the second higher self, even though I knew she's formidable and she's scary, and the very look of her, she doesn't even have, my first higher self presented to me like himself to me like a big giant. Well, she comes across like an alien. She has eyes that have like lightning that goes through them for pupils.
Wow.
Yeah, she's terrifying to behold, but she's a part of me.
Mm.
And I thought, well, if she's dark, but she's a part of me, but she's so beautiful, so potent, then what is this darkness? So I went right into the dark, and I started to study I got sexy with it. I sat down on the floor. I got all my negative bits out. I said, okay, let's have a chat. Show me yourself. Let's find out who you are and what you do and what's the point of you and why have you come to be. I started looking at texts that would bring me to a deeper meditative state, to do practices with alternative meditative guides. So I'd always resisted the shamanic drumming because the drums make me angry and I want to get up and fight.
Right.
I had to examine that. Why do you want to get up and fight? What is the message in the drum? What are you ignoring? Because there's a message that the drums are just storytellers.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Using the points that come up for us, the experiences, as gateways and keyholes and portals to more and further understanding. And sometimes you don't know what that means at first, but if you hold that question with curiosity, that in itself can be very empowering, can't it? To be able to go, well, I don't understand, I don't get it, I don't, and then instead of that being more like, well, I'm not entirely sure what that means for me and why it's showing up, but I'm going to stay curious with it. I'm going to attempt to hold it lightly and see what unfolds.
That was certainly my experience.
I love that.
Just to let me be me, all of me, so I could see it.
So do you recognize who you were when you first started this journey as compared to where you find yourself now?
Yes. And I do love the question when people say, if you could go back and speak to that person, then what message would you give them? My answer is nothing.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't change one single thing. Everything I have discovered, all the pain, everything, I'm very sensitive, so I do experience pain on perhaps a deeper level than I maybe ought to, or that others do. It doesn't matter because I'm me. And the person who gave me my greatest comfort in the uniqueness that I have, the abilities I have, was Deepak Chopra, when he said, when you calculate everything that had to happen in the skies, the stars, the alignment of the planets, everything that happened on the planet itself that day, the attitude of your mother and father, their direct environments, if you calculate all the odds that it took for you, that one spirit, to come into being at that point, I don't even know how many gazillions to one it would be. You're that unique. When you appreciate yourself on that level, then, my friend, you learn to be empowered and shine really, really, really brightly.
I love that. I guess the only last point I'd say from one sensitive soul to another is, whilst there's a lot to learn in the shadow, whilst it's, I think, unavoidable as a life experience on earth at this time, I don't want to glorify it. Like,
No.
I don't want it to be everything, because I think being a human and having a human experience at this time is rough and it's hard and
it's brutal.
It's brutal. That's a really good word. Well, there you go, just to anchor the point.
She's just confirming she doesn't like the brutality.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point to reinforce, that this isn't about saying, oh, the shadow is so wonderful. No. It's about just accepting and learning to be compassionate with ourselves and loving with ourselves in those moments, because the darkness wants us to reject ourselves. And that's essentially, well, it doesn't want us to reject ourselves. It's a byproduct of having those experiences. Is the only thing we learn to do is reject ourselves. And I think it's just really important to acknowledge the difference with that, you know.
So that was why I very much connected that the whole point of the shadow work was the full acceptance, which Ayurveda is the point of Ayurveda, and it's exactly what the work is about. The whole point of Ayurveda, people take it as a lifestyle and nutritional thing to make the body feel great. Actually, it's all about self-acceptance. There is no part of you that is not to be appreciated. You should really enjoy all aspects of yourself, even if they feel a bit distasteful sometimes. You know, it's important to do the shadow work, but once it's done, don't stay there. You don't need to stay there. You just need to know that that is as much a part of you as your fingernails, as your skin, as your bones. Without the shadow work, we can't appreciate the light, but the light is the life giver.
I love that. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, Mise, that I honor your life's journey and your experiences, all of the light, all of the dark, and the bits that you shared with us today, because what you've been through from what you've shared is a warrior's path. And it's not an easy path to go through, but it is a sacred one. It really must be acknowledged as a hero's journey, so to speak. And thank you for your time and sharing all of you in all of those ways today with us. I am honored to have witnessed and been speaking to you about this, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're so welcome, Dawn. And as I said at the beginning, it's utterly my pleasure, because empowerment is something that always feels untangible until we realize it comes from within. And it's always there.
And with the ability to hold somebody's hand, like you or I, it feels even more achievable, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. We're here to help. That's why we came.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So for anybody who wishes to find out more about you, how can they get hold of you? What's the best ways?
Best way is to just look me up on Facebook. So on Facebook, I'm Mise White. Mise is spelled M-I-S-E, Irish Gaelic name. So of course it couldn't be straightforward. And I respond directly. I'm pretty much on Facebook the majority of the day, and I tend to keep it to Facebook because I respect myself and I don't want to live on social media. The real life retreat page will be live at the end of this month. So if anybody interested in what I said about the retreats, they can have a look there. I do run a group called White's Wisdom, which we're going to be changing shortly. The title doesn't suit me anymore, and I've been asked by my guides to rename it. It's probably going to be called something, they're asking me to call it something like All Wisdoms, but I haven't got there yet. I still need to do that meditation today. But Mise White, if you just have a look for Mise, M-I-S-E, it's a weird name, and you'll find me quite quickly. And you will find I'm also very approachable. I do like to connect and help where I can.
Mise, thank you so much. And from the bottom of my heart, I wish you all the best with your upcoming endeavors, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Dawn. Oh.